Sixers win it! Wow!
Oh, man, and being just posterized Russell Westbrook.
You love the Philadelphia Eagles! Let me get a hell yeah!
Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome to Party On Broad. Guys, if you're new to the channel, please be sure to smash that subscribe button. Today, our Sixers draft coverage continues. And to help me break it down, it is an honor to bring on Michael Levin from the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. If you're new to their channel, link to subscribe is down below in the video description. What's up, Mike?
How's it going, man? Very excited. Draft week upon us. Here we go.
Oh, so excited, man. Let's just jump right in, man. Let's talk Sixers offseason. With the way the playoffs kind of ended here, the Sixers have several needs heading into next season. Daryl Morey's objective has to be, setting Joel Embiid up for a championship right now. In your opinion, what is the Sixers' biggest position of need moving into this draft?
So that's so hard to know with the Simmons conversation looming over everything. It's really hard to know. I'm gonna say my pet issue is a backup center that does different things than Joel. I know that's not exactly everything, but it's just been the issue in every playoffs that have mattered, where every time Embiid sits, he's just terrible, and they try to play the same way with some wildly worse player out there defensively. So I would love personally a more stretchy five who can switch a little bit. Not that that's what they're going to get in the draft, but that is, to me, they've never had it. They've just never had a competent. I mean, aside from Horford, which presented its own problems. Yeah.
Yeah. There's actually several guys here that we're going to be talking about in the first and second rounds that I think the meat and potatoes of this draft is in that late first, second round area. Just like you said, there are some guys that, some stretch bigs that will be available for the Sixers. And I also going to throw in point guard. It's time to give Joel Embiid a freaking point guard that can run the pick and roll. And there are some of those that we'll be talking about moving forward. Next question, man. There are a lot of rumors going around regarding the Sixers' first-round pick. Actually, one just dropped. Looks like Bradley Beal might be requesting a trade. We have this comment. That is unbelievable. And he actually is thinking about whether or not he does so before draft night on Thursday. Kyle Neubeck from the Philly Voice said yesterday that it's likely the Sixers won't keep their pick at number 28. What's your gut feeling right now, man? 0 to 10, 0 no chance, 10 being 100% sure. What is your confidence level that the Sixers will make the pick for themselves on Thursday night?
I feel like I'm a little more confident that they will than other people. I would say a 4.
Okay.
I find it hard to picture what a trade would look like that's not the Ben trade. If you're going to make any trade that you make prior to the draft will hamstring your ability to make a Ben trade. So if it's George Hill and a pick, then it's well, then you can't attach that in the Ben trade. And so it slightly convolutes that a little bit. I feel like it ties your hands a little. So in my mind, I think unless they do a Ben trade prior to the draft, which it doesn't seem like they're going to, just because of they're trying to be as patient as possible and let there be time between Ben's playoffs and when they trade him, so that everyone conveniently forgets how bad it got. But I think it's going to be a Mo Harkless situation where they draft a guy and then trade him. So I think it'll be a type of, how can we draft a player that we can boost the image of, because obviously everyone's talked about once you make the pick, it's a less enticing prospect. The idea of a pick could be anything, could be anybody, but once it becomes Charles Bassey, then you're well, it's Charles Bassey. So I feel like they're going to try to make a pick for someone whose stock could go up either in summer league or someone that would just be more enticing to somebody in a trade.
What is your, just quick, piggyback off of that? What's your quick philosophy? Do you want a prospect at number 28 that, that win now guy that's going to jump right in, could be 6, 7, 8 rotation guy, or are you looking for a project that could pay dividends 2 or 3 years down the road? Any quick thoughts on that, man?
It's so hard it really is so hard to know anything based on their thinking with Ben. But I would say as far as needs go, like I really like Maxey a lot. I would give him a shot to run point this year, even if Ben stays. I like Isaiah Joe as a rotational player to fill in on some of Korkmaz's minutes. Obviously love B-Ball Paul and think he should have a chance to fight for a backup 5 spot. But I think the thing they're missing is sort of like a big wing that can create a little bit. And as much as I like, and we'll talk about some of the more guard prospects that are more shooty and stuff, I wonder if the move both for the Sixers' future and for like a what could look good in a trade if this guy performs in summer league is doing one of those like, let's draft a guy who underperformed in college a little bit and has the potential to like really step up somewhere in like there's a bunch of guys that are in the kind of Romeo Langford role where like Boston got him. He obviously hasn't had a great career yet, but untapped upside because of either an injury or a situation in college that didn't pan out as well. And I'm looking at guys like Zaire Williams or Greg Brown on Texas or Brandon Boston in Kentucky. Or even like this, he had a pretty nice year, but JT Thor on Auburn. Guys that are bigger that are like, what is that guy special in some different way that's just going to take him a little while to get there because the Sixers don't have those kinds of players on the bench while there's a lot of role players that could blossom.
Awesome. Here's some comments. Sean says the Sixers need a point guard who can run a pick and roll and create better mismatches, run the offense. Cyberdale says wing player that could be a second score to Embiid and shoot well from 3-point range.
Sure. That guy sounds like the second overall pick.
Or some guard in Portland. I don't know who that. Some great point guard. Sean also says a perimeter creation and scoring in general. Let's move on to the first round. Who are your guys like number 28? Assuming they keep the pick for the Sixers, who are your like top targets there in that range?
I mentioned the sort of more forwardy guys, but there's a bunch of guys that like I think you're right when you said like that they're in the nice spot because the difference between 15 and 28 I think in this draft is pretty limited. I think outside the top 4, as everyone says, like there's just it's totally flexible where guys could go. I really I'm a Tyrese guy. So if people are looking for guys that are going to be better than Tyrese with the ball in his hands right now, I'm not really feeling that. I think that pairing them together in like a Lowry Van Vliet type of way is not a bad option, and try to find a nice blend of skills. But I've always loved Jared Butler. I think he's excellent. He's got a heart condition. It seems like that people are really concerned about that is similar to like the Chris Bosh thing, which is scary. And so hopefully that gets figured out, but I think he's an excellent player. And so just like a comfortable player, you really feel with him with the ball in his hands at Baylor is just like such a stabilizing force, always made the right decision. Excellent shooter off the catch. Not incredibly athletic, but just like really, really, really smart in like a Malcolm Brogdon type of way. Bones Highland is a hell of a shooter at VCU. And I think long enough to where you could put him at the 2. He's got to get a lot bigger in the same way that Isaiah Joe does, but really, really good shooter, pull-ups, can really score for himself and allowing Maxey to get more to the rim. And Highland can be more of a shooter in that way. And there's other guys that I just don't know who's going to get there. It's really like guys could be forever. Like Cam Thomas at LSU is awesome. Like total microwave scorer. Like I don't think he's going to pass his entire career. And then there's Trey Mann, who's Terrence Mann's younger brother at Florida State, who is Terrence Mann with Florida State, who's like just a really nice shooter, has little creation abilities, keeps getting bigger that people are talking about. And then guys who could fall, maybe like Jaden Springer, I like at Tennessee, who's an excellent point guard, big point guard, physical, like has a huge ass, which I always love in a point guard. And Chris Duarte, who probably won't fall that far at Oregon, who I also really love, is like sort of like this year's Desmond Bane type of just like be very good, be old, but be very good. And just like, and I don't think his potential is limited because of how old he is, because he played 2 years JUCO. So there's a lot of guys I like. I mean, I love this draft. It's just hard to fully invest in it because we're like, well, what's going to happen with Ben? Are they going to make the pick? All that stuff.
exactly. I'll throw one in there. Trey Murphy. I've been in love with him for months now. We've been doing scouting reports, and Murphy has the feet, the wingspan, the defense, the cutting to the basket, the shooting, just everything. Just as an off-ball guy to fit next to Joel Embiid, would love to see him.
Yeah,
in Sixers uniform.
Super athletic.
Crazy. Like his finishing at the rim is unbelievable. Which is something I would like to see Doc utilize Matisse more, at the, cutting to the basket heading into next season. But yeah, Bones Highland was my number 2. Just love his shot creation, love his shooting, high volume shooter. He is small, but dude's got a 6'11" wingspan. He had a good defensive rating at VCU, but just, lock him in the gym with Matisse and, teach him the ropes. But I do love Bones Highland. Sucks that Zumoff is gone because I would love to hear Mark Zumoff go Bones Highland for 3. But so let's roll on to the second round, man. Who are some of your this is I'm a huge second round guy, and I know you are too. So let's talk it up. Who are your second round targets for the Sixers?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the benefit of this draft is that there's going to be guys there also. It's not there always are. Like, you can always find somebody. People just are like, whatever, second round picks doesn't matter, but you always find guys, and people are looking like how many second round picks were making a big difference in the playoffs this year. Like, you can't knock it. There should be third round. There should be several more rounds to enjoy. I think this is a place where, like, there's nobody at 28 where I'd be like, definitely get him as a backup 5. I don't find anybody really that interesting there. But here's a place where you could, like, if you think that, like Filip Petrushev, who played at Gonzaga before going overseas, is sort of like a very different mix. Not a great defensive player, but like has that like European style stretch situation, good rebounder, good passer from the high post. I think that's just a different look from Embiid. Jay Huff is a guy I've looked at for a long time in Virginia. I think he's probably more of an undrafted guy, but as a stretch 5, like straight up, like very, Mike Muscala, Spencer Hawes, like just kind of like with some rim protection, but like pretty slow footed. But I think that he's a legitimate shooter. If they end up trading Jeremiah Robinson Earl from Nova, I think is a guy who could have to build out. You'd have to build him into like a real backup 5. And it would take some growing pains, but he's a guy that could switch and be a high energy guy, which is kind of what you want outside of Embiid on the bench there. And if you do trade Maxey in a trade, I think there's plenty of guys at that level that I'd be interested in. David Johnson from Louisville is a guy that I like as a guy that could step in and take some backup point guard minutes. Deuce McBride probably won't last that long from West Virginia, but I like him a lot, and it's such a cool name. And I really like Quentin Grimes from Houston. He was a big time prospect when he went to Kansas, and then just like underperformed and transferred to Houston. Worked on his body, worked on his shot, and worked on his motor, I think, which is not something you always see. And I think he'll be a really solid pro for a while. And Joe Wieskamp is another guy. He's like bigger wing, good shooter, shoots it high, and performed well at the combine. And to where you'd think like, oh, maybe the athleticism isn't as much of a problem. And he was pretty good at Iowa. So those are the guys I'm looking at, and they got to make one of those picks. They can't give me. I know that we're loaded up with young guys and everyone's very excited, but like, you can't give me 0. You can't give me 0. I need one.
Yeah, man. I love the Wieskamp pick. That guy is just catch and shoot, would thrive here in Philly. I think Philly fans would love him. I'm going to give you another one, a guy that I've kind of been gushing over, Sandro Mamukelashvili.
Oh, wow.
He's a near 7-footer, but dude, man, he's a point forward. He thrives in the pick and roll. Doesn't bring rim protection. That's going to be a problem, but he could be your stretch big. He shoots really well from 3 on high volume. Has really good feet, so he has some switchability. And I do like obviously, who wouldn't love to see it? Kalashvili, he's Mamu for short. But he's actually like, you could have a cohesive offense where Joel Embiid goes off the court and you can still keep running that pick and roll. And his numbers in the pick and roll are outstanding. And nearly 34% from 3 on a lot of shots. So let's roll on here. Let's talk about let's look back a little bit. Who are some of the guys in that first round? Or no, let's talk about who is a guy that you were so sure of that would hit but didn't pan out in the NBA for the Sixers? Who are some of those guys, man? Just looking back at the process years.
Yeah, I mean KJ is the obvious one.
That's the guy I wrote down.
It's hard not to say KJ. He's he should, and like honestly, if he came in like 3 or 4 years later, I think he would have. I think there was like that was the transition of like from needing to be actually good at one skill. And I think he would have been like, okay, I'll focus on being a role player. But I don't think that had seeped into the system yet. I think he was just like, I'm big and strong and fast, and I could jump so high, and that should be enough. And I think just a little, it just caught in between eras, or it just wasn't quite there. So that's tough. Other guys, I mean, a lot of guys that just turned like I was a big Christian Wood guy, and then he turned out to be very good, and so that was nice. Other guys.
KJ was my guy. I thought like Rio had 9 points in his rookie. I know it was the process years, but 20 some minutes, 9 points a game. Like Drew was a walking highlight reel. Yeah. Then he was traded to Houston, and he's been traveling in the G League ever since. So that's been tough to watch. I thought for sure he was a stud, man.
I know it's tough. I think Roden also feels. You wish that he had another guy that was just like, I'm fast, I'm going left, you can't stop it.
Yeah.
And like a couple years later, I think he was like, okay, I'll develop my game a little bit more. But both guys are just like, don't need to. Here's what I'm good at. End of story. Sign me or don't. And it didn't work out.
All right, I can't let you go before we wrap this up, man. We got to talk about it. Let's do it. Will the Sixers move Ben Simmons before or during draft night next week? What is your gut feeling right now, man?
I have no idea. I just have not a single clue. I like how the Sixers have postured. I guess it's the only way to do it. Although like previous Sixers front offices have been worse at posturing and leaking. Obviously, everyone knew that they were taking Matisse very early on, and that's how they could get sort of swindled out of a pick there. So I'm glad that they've at least done some like couching this in like we're not accepting more than this. There's no leaks about like Sixers unhappy with return, may have to settle, like those kinds of things. I think they have to be willing to let this go on for a long time to get the best value, or at least they have to posture that way. I just have no idea. I have no idea. The hope is between Beal and Lillard and possibly Levin. I think if one of those guys has to work out, and you have to be able to bring one of them here.
All right, man.
I don't know when. I don't know when it's going to happen. Could happen in fucking like late August when everybody's asleep. All of a sudden, it goes there. That'd be nice.
It definitely makes sense to wait until like the trade deadline. I think in terms of getting the most value, it definitely makes sense to wait. Man, it's going to be just looming. Like I just can't. It's like that Harden Ben Simmons thing that loomed all when the season started last year. It just drives me crazy. But
it's hard to know. Sorry, it's hard to know. Like, have we just crossed the point of no return there? Like, is it just in theory? You talk about like, yeah, you can wait until the trade deadline, but like, how much? What would happen to Ben's value if he's here? Like, unhappy to be here, relationship sour, and just like how much of that is affecting everyone's mental state, where we're like trying to play as if like, yeah, he's part of the team, and like nobody really believes it. Like everybody knows he's gone. And that's one thing to do with Houston when they're like, they're folding. It's not going to happen. But here it's like, well, we're trying to really advance. And the same thing with like Anthony Davis and the Pelicans. Like it's bad teams generally, or teams that have topped out at something. Like the Sixers have more hope than that. And so I think going into a season with a guy who clearly doesn't want to be here, and several players and ownership, doesn't want him here, rightfully so. I think a change of scenery is better for everybody, but it's how much would that really affect it? I think at a certain point, you might have to move on in the offseason before fucking media day. Like that's going to be brutal.
Brutal, man. All right, man. Just want to say thank you again for joining. Mike, what do you got going on, man? Where can we find you, dude?
The Rice to Ricky Sanchez podcast. We do 6,000 to 7,000 episodes a week. And I'm on Twitter, Michael_Levin, and I'm a TV writer on the show Young Rock, which season 2 will be coming out probably, I would guess, January-ish, February-ish. And that'll be very, very exciting. So check it out.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Guys, also always be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and check out the Rights to Ricky Sanchez. I'm sure you already have been too. But thank you, Mike, for joining. For Mike, for myself, stay awesome, everybody.
Sixers win it! Wow! Oh, man. Embiid just posterized Russell Westbrook.
You love the Philadelphia Eagles.